You can smell the powdered sugar floating through the air. You can hear the saxophones crying from the corners and feel the sun bouncing off the old stones beneath your feet. This is New Orleans, alive, loud, full of flavor, and full of spirit. They call it Jackson Square now. Artists paint under the oak trees, street performers dance for tips, psychics give readings under umbrellas, and tourists, they eat beignets and take pictures like it's always been sweet here. But this ground remembers a time when it was called Place d'Armes. Now, let me give y'all a quick French lesson. Just look at the word, Place d'Armes. It literally tells you what it means. It was the place of arms, where they kept the weapons, the artillery, the power, and eventually it became the place where power was put on display. Not just military power, but social power. The power to own, punish, and destroy. This wasn't just a park, this was a stage. And if you pay attention, you might still feel it. The land in the center of Place d'Armes is slightly raised, designed so everyone could see what was happening there. Executions happen right here, not blocks away, not somewhere hidden, but right in front of this big church, the St. Louis Cathedral, towering behind it all, quiet and still. Oh, the things this building has seen. And if you look across the street, you'll notice something else. There are stone steps built up like seats. People used to sit here and watch. This wasn't a show. This wasn't entertainment, but it was to them. People came from all around to witness other people being sold or hung, as if it were a public event, as if another person's pain was something to gather for. And on June 19th, 1784, right in the center of it all, they hung Jean Saint Malo. Jean Saint Malo was a black man who escaped slavery in Louisiana, but he didn't just run and hide. He fought back. He became a leader, a strategist, and a symbol of resistance. He built a maroon settlement near Lake Borgne. Now, Lake Borgne isn't technically a lake. It's more like a shallow lagoon or an open body of water connected to the Gulf of Mexico. It sits just outside of New Orleans East and is surrounded by marshlands and open wetlands. If you're driving out of the city on I-10 and you head over the Twin Span, look to your right. That wide open stretch of water you see beyond the marsh, that's Lake Borgne. It's part of the Gulf. Well, let's just say that's Lake Borgne. Back to the story. That swampy land made it hard for anyone to reach him, and even harder to take him down. Now, let me explain this part because a lot of people don't know it. A maroon wasn't just a word for a runaway. It was a name given to the enslaved people who escaped and refused to come back. The ones who went out into the wild and built whole free communities on their own terms. And just so you're clear, you didn't become a maroon just by being enslaved. You became a maroon when you escaped. It wasn't just a label, it was a status, a title you earned through resistance. The word maroon actually comes from the Spanish word cimarron. Louisiana wasn't just French, it was also under Spanish rule at one point. The word cimarron was first used for animals that escaped into the wild. Then it got used to describe enslaved Africans who ran away and refused to come back. It didn't mean brown, because that's what I thought. It meant wild, unbroken, and free. And that's exactly what Jean Saint Malo was. Think of maroon communities like an early version of the Underground Railroad, except it was happening long before the North was even thinking about freedom. Jean Saint Malo helped build one of the largest maroon settlements in the region, but he didn't stop there. He organized multiple communities, protected escapees, and armed his people. There were reports he raided plantations for supplies and weapons, and that's why colonial officials didn't just call him a runaway, they called him a commander. And he wasn't working alone. He built alliances with Native American tribes who helped protect him and his people. That's part of the same history that lives in the Mardi Gras Indian tradition, when Black communities honor the native tribes who helped us survive. You get it? Now, here's the part people really overlook. Years after Jean Saint Malo was gone, a group of Filipino sailors escaped Spanish ships and built their own settlement out in Louisiana swamps. And guess what they named it? Yep, Saint Malo in his honor. Why? Because even though they weren't black, they were still running from the same kind of oppression, the same empires that wanted to keep them in chains. And in Jean Saint Malo, they saw strength, they saw freedom. When the Spanish finally caught him, they didn't just want him gone. They wanted to make an example out of him. So they brought him to Place d'Armes, the center of the city, with the church behind him, the crowd in front of him, and the rope ready. On June 19th, the same day we now recognize as Juneteenth, they hung Jean Saint Malo in front of everyone. So that park you walk through today, filled with music and painters and photo ops, it was once filled with debt, chains, and silence. They wanted people to see Jean Saint Malo die. They wanted folks to feel it, to learn from it, to fear it. But the thing about stories like this is, you can bury a body, you can tear down a scaffold, but you can't kill the memory that clings to this place. Earlier this year, when New Orleans hosted the Super Bowl, the NFL projected lights and graphics across St. Louis Cathedral. Some folks called it disrespectful to the church. But if they knew the history, they'd know that church has seen some things. Right in front of it, enslaved people were auctioned off and freedom fighters were hung. Right beside it, there was a prison built to hold those who tried to escape. And behind it, the ballroom held quadroon balls and more slave auctions. So don't talk about disrespecting the cathedral, when that cathedral once stood silent as people were destroyed on its doorsteps. They try not to tell these stories. They don't talk about the strength of Jean Saint Malo, how he escaped, how he led, how he fought for others. They want us to forget. But we don't. Because while there was pain, there was also power. While there were chains, there was also courage. While there were tears, there was also resistance. And that's the importance of knowing your history. We can't wait for someone else to tell it. We tell our own stories. Because if we let them tell it, they'll lead you to believe that we chose this life, that we went along quietly, and that we never fought back. But we know that's not true. So the next time you come down here for some beignets, or you're just taking a stroll along the river, pay attention, look around, and take it all in. Because these grounds have stories, and we're going to tell them. We're just getting started. So do me a favor, share this story so more people can hear it, and more people can feel it, because more people need to know. These are the stories they don't want us to hear, because they go against the narrative that says we were just victims, that we accepted our fate, and that we never fought back. But we did, and we do. So keep watching, keep listening, and keep remembering. Peace.